Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Real Talk. Today, as usual, I'm joined by the lovely Adelaide. Today, we have a little bit of a double feature for you all, if you will. We took a quick break and were able to watch a lot more content within the time that we took, which is basically just one movie and a series, but we are super excited to talk about them with you today. The film we watched was What If, starring Daniel Radcliffe, Zoe Katan.
Kazan.
Kazan. There's a Z in there. I knew there was a Z in there somewhere. And the series that we watched is HBO's I May Destroy You, which has been in the news recently for good and disappointing things. I think disappointing in the sense that this award season, it was fairly snubbed. If I have any say about it, what do you think?
I think I will save my thoughts for later.
All right. Oh, that's
anticipation.
Yeah. There you go. Because we will be talking about What If first. And this movie is from what, like 2010, 2011?
2013.
Ooh, okay, yeah, that's about the area that I saw it coming from.
Yeah. It's about a failed medical student.
Yep.
Who's like really depressed, living with his sister, which is a mood.
Mhm.
And then just hide away from everyone until one day he goes to a friend's party and he meets this amazing girl played by Zoe Kazan, a god among women, a god among people, just everything, just stunning. And it's a will they, won't they? We might get together. I might gaslight you for a year. I may have like more interesting best friends than you. It's a very
God, the more you talk about it, I mean, the more I'm remembering, like, yeah, you're just about right.
Well,
I think my thing is that I connected with Robert, my gosh, Daniel's character so much because he kind of has a similar like idea to dating that I do, is I'm gonna hide away until one day the universe brings me together with the person I need to be with. And that was, I mean, that is all that I needed. That's the confirmation that I needed. It took him a while, took him a second, but
you brought up something which actually we're probably gonna wrap around to it in our second part of this. But I started off the thing very negatively. I watched it for the first time back in like November, and I fucking loved it. I think it's amazing. It's one of the, just like, to me, it's like one of like the one of the smaller rom-coms. Like, oh yeah, just pop it on Netflix or whatever, and you're just blown away. Like, this is actually really funny, really endearing, great heart, great characters. And I watched it back the second time with my partner, and I still really like it. But the entire time, they're just pointing out like, wait, isn't he like really manipulative by basically like creating this friendship and basically lulling Zoe Kazan, her name's Chantry, lulling Chantry into this false sense of security of just like, oh yeah, you're my best friend, and then pulling the rug out from under her. But also, like, I can say this as the patented gay best friend in like middle school and high school, just like, wait, you have feelings for me? You didn't tell me. It's like, yeah, I wouldn't have had you as a friend then.
Well, no, that is okay. So here's my thing. I am someone who has so I guess I've been in a very similar situation to not both of them, but just actually, I think both of them. I mean, my one and only, boyfriend that I've ever had, we had a similar relationship where he knew, and he knew for the longest time that I had a crush on him and that I really, enjoyed being around him and thought we would be good as a couple. But for about like 2 or 3 years, he was just kind of like, no, but I do want to be your best friend. And best friends we were. We did everything together. We lived next door. It was one of those very like not the girl next door situation, but I was. But this entire time, he's still like, talked to me and engaged in conversation and friendship with me. And a lot of people, said like he's leading you on. He's, making you feel like something's gonna happen. And eventually something did, but I never really saw it as that. I just saw it as we both enjoy each other's presence. I don't know.
Well, so here's the funny thing. I was in almost the exact same situation in high school where it was literally just like, I was always like the fallback for one of my female best friends. And eventually things did happen, but it was still that ingenuineness
Right.
of I might get feelings for you later. Until then, who's to say? I think the thing here though is different
Yeah.
because Wallace and Chantry. We did not
Wallace.
say their name at the top of the show. I just because I went with the joke.
Wallace.
Wallace never tells her though. Like they're like she straight up asked him, is like, do you want to sleep with me? Because I have a boyfriend. He's like, no. I want to hang out with you. I want to be your friend. Like he takes that active step in lying to her and basically like gaslighting a little bit, like just lulling her into that false sense of security
Leading
of
or
thinking that he's there
right.
for like misleading her, like thinking he's just there to be your friend, but really he's just waiting it out until she's so vulnerable and I wish there was a man in my life, and he's like, hey, what's up? I'm British. I can do magic. How are you doing? Again, like I think this is a really great movie, and there's a lot of good romance and comedy and everything to be had, almost like it's a rom-com.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that thing where it's hard for, at least for me, now that I've had like some like an external perspective on it, to get past the fact that like, ooh, this is actually like a really bad initial relationship.
Now, let's think about it in a different way, because this is kind of again going back to my ex, because it's the only thing I love to talk about. For the longest time, I did my best because I knew that my feelings for him may have made him uncomfortable. I did my best to push those away and get over it and move on to something different. But when it comes down to it, you can't help your feelings. You know what I mean? So I think I saw it more as I don't think he was intentionally striving to get with her at the end of the day. I think he was even tried to, respect her wishes, but at the end, like he loved her and he couldn't help it. I know that sounds weird, but that's kind of my experience with feelings, at least. So I get where he's coming from.
I think if we're looking at like an emotional comparison, we could look at like When Harry Met Sally,
Mm.
where it like Harry never really thought this was going to be a possibility. He was always like,
Mhm.
"Oh, men and women can never be friends," and she's like, "I don't think that's true." And
Right.
then they had that will they won't they, but it was a genuine. Neither of them really saw that as a possibility until it was
Right.
officially there. Thing is
Mm.
that Wallace always had those thoughts, and the characters that we just completely ignored, the two best characters in this fucking movie, his best friend and her sister,
Mm.
Alan, played by Adam fucking Driver in an amazing performance, Mackenzie
He's great.
Davis, another goddess.
Uh-huh.
Uh, Wallace talks to Alan. Alan,
Mhm.
that's his name, Adam. He talks to Alan, and he's just like, you are misleading her. Here are your options, but at the end of the day, like, you know this, and she doesn't.
Right.
That's not a genuine relation because you're hiding something from her. You are creating a false set of circumstances, and you don't know what that friendship is really like. Leads to like, again, first watch, one of my favorite scenes. Second watch, one of my least favorite scenes is the changing room scene.
Oh gosh.
Like,
Yeah.
it's that thing where it's just like, if I go lizard brain and I'm like, ooh, cute shit. Like, it's just like,
Mhm.
oh, look at like
Mhm.
him
Liz.
lying to her and just like taking in her beauty is just so cute because it's her authentic self. And the
Right.
second watch, like, ooh, this is like really like manipulative and
A
taking
little
advantage of
creepy.
her.
Mhm. Wow. See, and it's funny because this genre of film, this kind of early 2010s cheesy, quirky girl rom-com. And I only call it that because it's a very like Zoe Deschanelian kind of type of movie. There's cute, animations of birds, and there's
The
fun.
animation is so
I
cute.
love the animation. That was honestly one of my favorite parts. But it's a movie, and I thought this to myself while watching it, was that if I saw this movie when it came out, I would have watched it 50 times by now. It's that kind of it's very comforting. It's very, like kind to the eyes, kind to the senses. It's not harsh. It's not Mad Max Fury Road. It's like quite the opposite. And I think that I think that that may I mean, like you said, it's a rom-com. It's a cute, cheesy rom-com. It may mislead, a little bit because I think, like you said, you start to watch it and you realize, oh, it's a little. This is a little creepy. This is a little manipulative. This is a little. There's something off. There's something going on. But I mean, again, I just think that relationships in general are imperfect at times, whether it be with a friend or with a partner. And I don't know. Am I looking at this wrong?
I think the thing to look at it is like there is this smaller subsect of films, which is like
Mhm.
you can enjoy if you acknowledge the flaws in the relationships.
Right.
And it is literally Scott Pilgrim,
Yep.
500 Days of Summer,
Mm.
Ruby Sparks, and this.
Have you seen Ruby Sparks yet?
I haven't, but I know
You
enough
know.
about it that I can.
You know.
Yeah, no,
Mm,
I can. The premise alone
mhm.
sets up this issue of just like it is really cute and the way things are going are great. And really this one fucking aspect of it makes all of it questionable.
And I mean, to tell you how fucking skewed my perspective is, 2 of the movies you just talked about are in my top 10 list of favorite movies of all time.
Two of them are my top 100 of all time. I get it.
There
I
I
fucking love
mean,
two of those
there you
movies.
go. So, I think it's less that we have a skewed view of relationships, it's more so that we are able to see maybe the good in it, where there's a little bit of uh-oh, ruh-roh-ness. I don't know.
There is some scoop in this, yeah.
There's some
Uh,
stupidness.
but again, the best relationship ever is between Alan and Nicole
Yeah.
because it has one of the greatest Adam Driver lines of all time.
You really love this
Which
line.
I forget when I pitched it to you. Did I mention
You
the
did,
scene?
yeah.
Okay, it's just so
It is
good.
pretty funny.
The man just had the best sex of his life, and he's about to eat nachos.
He's about to eat nachos.
Like,
I mean, he did it. He peaked.
yeah.
I wish
I,
I
I
could do
just
that.
I don't know. I just find something really endearing about this like B plot of their relationship. But then they stay committed to each other, and they always have that passion, and they keep like this lightheartedness and the entire time that they are together. And it just really works. Like it really just hits me. I think a big part of it is like if I saw this when I was like 14, I would
Mhm.
100% just like connect with it because I really feel like Wallace is that nice guy mentality, and it really comes down to we're really like I didn't explain this well enough because I wanted to be funny in the beginning. Chantry is with someone at the beginning of the film, and
Yes.
then some of the time through they break up. It's literally like, "Oh, I'll be your friend," and he wants to wait it out, and then he sees that she has a shitty boyfriend, and
Mhm.
this was a conversation that he has later in the movie with Alan that I sort of hinted to, where it's like literally like they're in a very unhealthy, unsupportive, like emotionally closed relationship, and he decides, "Oh, you know what? What if I save her?
Ooh.
What if I show her what a good man can be?" And Alan's like, "Okay, there are three things you can do. You can try to take her away from your boyfriend, where it's manipulative and she'll never want to talk to you again,
Mhm.
or you could just wait it out and hope at the end of this she's not mad at you, which she will be because you just lied to her for. I think this takes happens over the course of like a year or two. He's like, okay, so what's the third option? Move on. Not have a feeling for you. And he's like, I can't do that. It's the entire time of him just being like, I've got to wait for my time to strike.
And I guess like that the movie itself kind of promotes this nice guy situation because it's like, hey, if hey, all men who are like this, if you wait, it'll happen. I mean, that's a lot kind of toxic. That's not
Well,
a good
and
thing to
that's the thing with
people.
500 Days of Summer, where it's
Mm,
like if you literally cut, and you've seen it, right?
yeah.
Okay, yeah. So it's like you literally like if you cut out the autumn part, you functionally punish Tom for being like this shitty, manipulative, self-centered guy.
Mhm.
But because at the end of the film you introduce Autumn and you're just like, oh look, he's learned when he really hasn't. He's just been depressed and now he's happy again.
Yep.
It's rewarding these mentalities, and you have to go into these films like with that thought in the back of your head of, you know, I can accept this art. It's like it's basically like separating the art from the artist, but like in a
Oh,
smaller microcosm
yeah.
where it's like we can acknowledge that this is not perfect, this is not healthy, but
Mhm.
I like it.
The thing that gets me the most, I think, is how much I just hate her old boyfriend.
Oh,
How
he's
much of a
such a
piece of
douchebag.
shit he is. And I mean,
I
you know, like it's the very classic, like we are, you know, boy and girl are in love, but work comes before anyone else sort of situation, at least when it comes to the boyfriend.
To me, it always read as like he kept her around because she was convenient for him, or she was always
Um,
convenient.
huh. I
Which is why, like, the second they're apart, he cheats,
right.
or why he puts in like the lowest amount of effort
Mhm.
when they are apart just to maintain the relationship.
Right.
Where
When
it's just like, hey, I
she's
miss you and I'm really upset. She starts crying on the phone. It's like, okay, now is the time to call. He doesn't
mhm.
give a shit. He puts in the least amount of effort that he can just to maintain that it's there. That way she's always gonna be there. And that he'll
Wow.
never have that chance to miss her.
Huh. I never thought about it like that, but it makes me hate him even more.
Oh, it's
Gosh.
both times. It was so fucking satisfying. Like when you first like meet him, and they have this whole like slapstick comedy bit where Wallace basically makes it so that he breaks half the bones in his body and falls
Yep.
out a window.
Yep.
Great.
And
So satisfying.
it was before you even like truly see all the shitty stuff he does too. Like the only thing that he had done at that point was like go to Wallace and be like, "You're trying not like I don't know. Oh my god, you're not trying to sleep with my girlfriend, are you?" And get really douchey and like overprotective and kind of creepy about it. And but even that was enough for
he
me to be
he
like,
just radiated shithead
he
energy.
did. He looked like a Chad. I wanted him to fall out of the window immediately. Like I was ready.
What it was just the atmosphere. It's like, if you touch her, I'm gonna break your fucking
Yeah.
hands. Ha 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 ha. Want a beer? Like, I hate
Oh,
it. Oh, I fucking hate that guy.
what a creeper. I just, ugh.
But But the end of the film
Yes.
gets me. It fucking hits me. Where it's just like, wait, you went to Vietnam? I went to Vietnam, and like this weird guy just stalked me there and he just proposed to me. I just proposed to, like, I love that. I love,
That
like,
was really
for a
cute.
little bit there, it almost got me. And
It got
then
you, get you. It makes you
I
think that, they
yeah.
completely actually didn't see each other for years and it was scary, but I mean, that's a feel good moment. That's something that I think got me and I was kind of like, okay,
Yeah.
this movie is sweet. This movie, I don't know. I just feel like this is such a concept, like the concept of what if is it's been done a lot, I'm sure. Like the whole girl has boyfriend, man is in love with her. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But it's still I don't know, they found a way to make it entertaining and they found a way to make it fun and fresh.
Oh, I think you hit on something, which is like the best and most interesting relationships we watch in media aren't the healthiest. And
Yeah.
at one point we need to acknowledge that, because like healthy relationships sometimes just like aren't the most interesting to watch, because it's just like
Mhm.
you guys are happy together. If you have an argument, you guys settle it and you both grow as people.
And you
That's
go to
not
bed
fun to
happy.
watch. Which is why you had a super healthy relationship, the B plot
There
of Adam Driver and
yeah.
Mackenzie Davis. And the one shitty thing they did was literally
Mhm.
directed toward their main characters, which is why there was a focus on it. Which,
Right.
the last thing I'll point out, before we move on to part two,
Mhm.
the beach scene. Holy
Oh my
shit.
gosh.
Holy shit.
I connected because she freaked out because a fish touched her foot, and that is exactly what would happen to me in the ocean. I love the ocean. If anything fucking touches me in the ocean, I hate the ocean.
No, when you just go out to swim and just some seaweed just wraps
You
its
can
way
see what
around your leg.
and it's kind of spiky, and you're just like, what the
And there's
shit?
like a big
Yeah.
fucking just like bulbous shit that's just sitting there just like
It's
tapping
always
you.
it's weird. Oh, it's so weird. Or like a little crab scuttle. Oh, and this
Yeah.
is not the point. They were naked in the beach together.
Okay, but
I
it's just such a good scene, because
know.
again, like there's a scene later in the film. We spoil everything. I don't know why we're explaining this to you.
Yeah,
Uh, the scene later in the film where she literally just she looks at me. It's like, I'll look if you look. It is just so, I don't
I
know what the
mean,
word is. And like, but it comes back on her later in the end. Like he turns around, it's just like where the nice guy shows up again, where he blames
mhm,
her for it. It's like, oh, this is your fault too. You looked at my dick. It's like, then it was never her fault about it.
right.
But when you actually like invest in the relationship, it's such a fucking good scene.
Well, and can I ask what your thoughts are about her saying, "I'll look if you look." Is that purely just a haha, we're friends, let's look at each other?
Oh no, 100%. That was like remote, like romantically and sexually
I
charged.
yeah,
It was in my like interpretation. It was her like making a decision, thinking, "Oh, this is possible," and immediately regretting it the next day, to the point that she sort of blamed herself for it.
yeah, and I think it was even that she immediately regretted it as soon as they realized that their clothes were stolen and there was one sleeping bag left. I think that's when because that's a little too far. That's, she was just ready to see his penis, not sleep with him naked. What would you rate this? Because I'm
I would
curious.
give it like a. So here, are we going to do it out of 5, 10, or 100? I got to clarify that first.
Let's do it out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would do like a low 9.
Oh, okay.
Where it's like, I really enjoy it. And I can just say from like a subjective point of view, I really enjoy the relationship. I think it's really funny. I have a good time with it. It's going to have that issue with a lot of with, again, the 4 films I mentioned, or 3 other films I mentioned previously,
Right.
where you always have to make that hurdle of ignoring the toxicness of it to enjoy it. And that's something that's going to hold it back from me giving it anything higher.
Right. Okay. No, I feel that. I think for me, it's definitely an 8, just a solid 8 out of 10, because it's what?
I like it more than you, and I'm the one shitting on it.
No. Well, my thing is that, it's not something that I am speeding and racing through the town, like dying to show somebody. And it's not something that I'm like dying to rewatch like ASAP. But I appreciate it because I know that if I'm ever like, in a bad place, or, I need something comforting to fall asleep to, that it's there. You know what I mean? It's one of those that I'm just kind of like, this, this is in my back pocket if I need it on a rainy day, but it's never going to be like the, starring player in a movie night with friends. But I do appreciate it, and I maybe I'll give it higher or maybe lower depending on if I look at it with a new perspective a second time around. But I thought it was fun. I like that we got to watch it, because it wasn't something brand new or too intense or dramatic like what we will be talking about in about 5 seconds. For this next part of the podcast, we will be moving on to a series that has a little more serious content within it. And I just want to give a quick trigger warning if there is anyone out there who does not or would not like to listen to us talk about a show that involves non-consensual or sex or sexual assault, or rape for that matter. This would maybe be a good time to call it a day on Real Talk for the week. However, if you would like to stick around, and this and it is the 2020 series I May Destroy You, which was created by Michaela Cole. I believe that's how you pronounce her last name, because that's what it looks like. Yeah. But were you aware of Michaela Cole before watching
Literally
this?
Did not know of her at all.
So I was super invested. She was on a show, and I think she may have created the show. Maybe not, though. I'd need to look into that. She was on a show called Chewing Gum back in 2015 to 2017. That was on the BBC, I believe. Maybe not. I tend to think that the only channel in London, or the entire UK for that matter, is the BBC, because it's kind of like,
I'm sure that's all it is. Like
I
nothing
mean,
else.
they got like BBC 11 to 0, so you would assume. But she was on a show called Chewing Gum, which was a lot more lighthearted. It was just kind of about a girl living in London with her family and friends, which that is what I May Destroy You is about as well. However, it is much heavier and much more artistic, I would say, than Chewing Gum. But this show is basically the log line is the question of sexual consent in contemporary life, and how in the new landscape of dating and relationships, we make the distinction between liberation and exploitation. And really, this is exactly that. It's a very modern, well, not modern take, but it's kind of looking at the lives of young adults living in a big city, trying to make it through, being adults, all while wanting to have a good time and kind of trying to stick to your youth. But there are things that are traumatic that come along, and it kind of puts a damper on everything. And it's really the effect that sexual assault can have on a person and their entire livelihood after the fact. It's a real just just destroying thing, and I mean, I may destroy you, I think there's a lot to talk about within that title, just as it
I,
is.
I, I also think like now, so because I basically went in the show on the pitch of I saw people on Twitter, namely Clemmy, if you follow her, she's great, talking about it. It's like, oh, this is great, and then Golden Globe turn around like, what the fuck, where is it? Like,
Mhm.
you know what? Now is the right time to watch. I feel like it's right there. A lot of people like it. Let's give it a try. I knew basically nothing about it,
Right.
and even watching over the course of these past 2 days, I still didn't really know what was happening until I started watching it. So
Right.
hearing the log line makes more sense to me now, because I
Mhm.
went into it basically saying like, oh, these first episodes are about sexual assault, and okay, we're going somewhere, and then it's become almost a backdrop of the character
Mhm.
for a good chunk of the
It
season, but
took
then
the back
it's
seat for a second.
like it's always the B plot until it comes back in like a really striking way.
Right.
But it makes sense now because
Mhm.
that's sort of the point of the show,
Right.
where it happens, and yeah, you can move on to an extent, but it's always there, and it's always impacting
Right.
Arabella,
Mhm.
and how this one time it happened. It happened multiple times in the show to multiple other characters. We can talk about that
Right.
more later. But it happens to her, and it happens to her again a second time in a different capacity, and it just changes the way she sort of does and perceives everything. And simply by just like this horrendous act of nature, she slowly, fundamentally changes as a human being. And
Mhm.
I think looking at the show through that lens, it's really good. I came into this thinking a little bit more negatively on it, but no, like the more I think on it, it's like no, this like really works.
Yeah. And I think that, that is something that I was also kind of like, I wasn't taken aback by it, but I was also a little confused because when I very like much like you, I heard about this show, I think through Twitter. I have, all the HBO whatevers, and so I had seen it and I recognized Michaela um as an actress and was kind of like, oh, okay, what's she up to? What is she doing? Like, I loved her in that one show. I want to watch this now. But finding out that she was the one who like created the show. This is her show, and this is in a sense her story. That's what I gained, and I really only heard about or saw the aspect of sexual assault being talked about. I never really, or I never really knew that there was much else to the plot of the show. But I mean, you don't solely follow Arabella. You follow Terry and Kwame, and many others. Uh, Theo, like this kind of cast of characters that have all kind of had these life altering events happen to them, and it's about watching how they attempt or just go about their daily lives after this very um scary thing occurring to them. And I guess, I mean, no, like you said it best yourself. It's considered, or it's looked at as a B plot, or as something that's just kind of always in the back of their minds. It's never, it's the starring aspect of the series within the first maybe 2 or 3 episodes, but then you get, about halfway or a quarter of a way through it, and they kind of start going back to normal, and you're remembering like, right, they have jobs, they have deadlines that they're trying to meet, and they have, friends and family that they're trying to hang out with and be normal with. But it's not until, every once in a while that you're like, right, but they were just traumatically assaulted,
Well,
and
even
oh,
like that's also how the characters sort of perceive it as well. Because you mentioned how basically like, they're living their life and like, oh shit, the real world exists.
right.
And again, like it's how this one event sort of just makes them realize like, oh, I still need to function, I still need to do things, and that's a
Mhm.
lot of Arabella's journey. Because
Right.
like, the whole series sort of based around she's a writer and she's made some progress in a book that she has to do, and she's being paid to do it, but she just can't finish it.
Nope.
And all of these, there's like all these repercussions
Yeah.
around how long it's taking her to do this book, and it also leads to her second assault, and how all of this, and she keeps trying to take care of herself and live her own life, also the burden of work being put on her, and again how this assault sort of is making it harder for her to come back to work. And I think the end of the series like really ties it up really nicely.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I think outside of like our main three, who I think are all amazing characters, I think Theo is the best
Oh
examination of what the show is really about.
right.
Where it's about how sexual assault impacts one for the rest of their life.
Mm-hmm.
And you see a flashback of what happened to Theo when she was in high school, I think it
Yeah.
was, and how it happened and how that changed how she perceived the world, and it changed her goal in life.
Right.
And she suddenly became an advocate and had support groups and everything. And like that is the show.
Mm-hmm. And it also shows you the more the other side, I'd say, of it, not saying like the view of the person of the rapist, if you will. It's not showing you the light of that side, but it's showing you, because when there is the scene where Theo is assaulted in high school, you have your main characters, you have Arabella and Terry on the side of the abuser, and you see how misinformation and not misunderstandings, but just a lack of understanding about what is considered rape, which to me is anything non-consensual. If no is no,
Yeah.
that is solely it. But back then, I'm guessing when they were in high school, it would have been early 2000s. You people had less of an understanding about consent, I'd say, and things along those lines. And so when you see them supporting the boy who sexually assaulted Theo, and being on his side and tearing Theo down even more after it happened, it's kind of, you see how perspectives can change, as well as how there are still people out there who don't understand how draining and completely debilitating the act of being sexually assaulted, and the toll that it takes on a person.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to point out, and I'll read section, I mentioned her earlier. I'll read section of Clemmy's review. She's on Letterboxd. An important thing to note about this is that it is art from the perspective and experience of a Black woman.
Right.
I am neither Livy's one half, so we
I'm
can't
woman,
we
yeah,
can't
woman.
yeah we can't
We can't
really
fully
we can't speak on the experience of the show and what it means to a larger extent, because we haven't lived the life, and we can't speak that from that perspective. And I just want to point this out there because I think the show is great, and I think this is something that needs to be put in the world that we can't really remark about.
Very true.
Clemmy said that the story that it showcases Black women's experiences, gambling with vulnerability, and that's really hard to come by in a lot of ways, and how there's so much unexplored areas in trauma and frustration and social overstimulation, and how you react to trauma through drugs and sex and strangers and social media, which is a big thing in the show.
Big thing.
That's never really shown in media, and they're just sort of expected to discover that part of themselves on their own in a healthy way.
Right.
Again, I don't want to comment on that as well, but I think she writes a great review of it. I recommend you check it out on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
But I think that's a big intrinsic thing of the show that we're sort of missing in our criticism.
Oh yeah.
Even to the extent of, unfortunately, Malcolm and Marie, which we reviewed last week.
Yes.
About how all Black art is it or isn't it political, and having to carry that lens into it, and are we the right people to sort of perceive that and even understand what the show is talking about?
No, and you brought up the point of the idea of social media kind of not exactly being something that it worked for her as a distraction for only so long before it became more of a hindrance. And I think that was an interesting kind of thing that they used, because like within, I'd say, millennial art and millennial work, you really don't see the side of the you don't see the idea of all social media and all technology is bad. We must, never submit to the technology overlords. And I think that this show does a good job of not being socially negative or
It's
technology.
not entirely demonizing it.
Right, but it definitely shows how it can have a very negative effect on the mental state of people,
Yeah.
which I think is more than true. I think people may be a little more hypercritical of the idea of technology, not exactly, or and social media, of it being kind of a troublesome thing at times because we're so caught up in the ideas that it's our lives, we can do what we want, we can post what we want, which I also very much agree with. But I think that when you're using it as an escape and you are feeding on you're putting the responsibility of other people to hype you up and take you away from this kind of traumatic thing that has happened to you. I think that it can turn sour really quickly, which is exactly kind of what happens to Arabella. She's going live and she's trying to rant about, some of the things that she's been going through, and, she's walking the streets and she's getting a little overwhelmed with everything, and people, are watching this live. And they're saying, it starts off like, yes, queen, like you're killing it. We love you. But it so quickly turns on her to become more of a, you need therapy. Oh my God, what's wrong with you? And you can see how that just pushes her a lot further and deeper into a more, traumatized and just overwhelmed state.
Yeah, well, so to put on my pretentious nerd glasses,
Oh my God.
this is literal. If you guys are on audio, you can't see it. So social media went from a parasocial relationship to a parasitic relationship.
Whoa.
And
Oh
how
my
it,
God, that blew me
like
away.
again, like social media really is people thinking that they connect to this, that they can connect to the person that they follow, the person they give all of their time and attention to, and they worship what Arabella says.
Mm-hmm.
And when she becomes like this prominent, outspoken voice, like the symbol of just like confronting sexual assault and sort of teaching
Feminine
what counts
power.
as rape,
Right.
because there's smaller ideas about that in the show as well.
Mm-hmm.
About and the second time that she's assaulted, it's a guy taking off a condom, and how she doesn't perceive it as rape until someone sort of tells her it is, or how her friend Kwame is assaulted and a police. Oh, I hate that
Oh
fucking
my
scene.
God.
The police officer doesn't take him seriously
Yeah.
because like there wasn't penetration, and also
And
you're a gay man, so I don't give a shit about what happened.
that's another
Just
thing, is
blows it off.
that whole aspect of the because I mean, and you see it, there's this it's black and white. You see how, there are two very competent and kind and gentle women who are helping Arabella with her case, of her of, finding the man who'd sexually assaulted her. And then when Kwame gets sexually assaulted, you have just it's a very different experience. It's, it's one man who's a police officer. We don't really know if this is like what he, like, you can tell that when Arabella is, being questioned, and when they're taking all of her information, these two women are most likely experts on helping sexual assault victims and getting them the justice that they deserve. Whereas in Kwame's case, it's treated much less carefully and a lot more like, I mean, I almost got the sense from this police officer that he was like, what do you expect me to do about it?
It speaks to the gendered experience of sexual assault,
Yep.
where it's
100%.
which is like men aren't taken seriously in it. It's
Yep.
and when things happen to them, it's like part of it's like, oh, if it's done by women, it's like that's not assault. You had sex. Woohoo, good for you. And people just ignore that how traumatizing that can be. And when it's done by a man, they dismiss gay relationships thing and just think it's not worth their time.
Yep.
And there's no respect on that. And Kwame's story is a part of that. And I'm really happy that got shown and displayed in the show, while also, I think, at least giving respect to everything that Arabella had to go through.
Right. And you also, I appreciated that they showed Kwame's story as well. You know, they could have just kind of kept his assault. I mean, sure, his assault was a B plot. It kind of took the back seat to Arabella's experience, but you know, the show is written by Arabella, if you will. It is Arabella's show, because it is Michaela's show and Arabella is Michaela. But
Yeah.
you know, I appreciated that they didn't just his assault just didn't just happen and then they let it go. I think that you had to watch him go through his own stages of grief and understanding with that, as well as watch him make mistakes and watch him do things that maybe he shouldn't have done to attempt to soothe himself because no one else would and no one else would
Yeah.
listen. Everyone his story took the backseat to Arabella's very literally because he knew that she was going through this just as he was, and he didn't want to overstep and say, you know, hey, me too. He,
Yeah. Well,
he, right.
and they goes into like I referenced it earlier, but
Mm-hmm.
the idea of how this misleading can't count as assault to an like
Mm-hmm.
I won't even say to an extent, like it counts as assault because you are creating a false identity and you were lying for the circumstances of
Right.
sex. And the show quietly but still addresses that in that capacity. Kwame also assaults a woman. Her name is
North
Niloufer. She has a very
very what is that, Gaelic?
I would say Swedish. Like I was
Is
thinking
it
like
Swedish? Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds from
Like
that
a
area of
European character.
a
Right.
European name. I'll say that. Uh,
This show is
but
British. I mean, I said the BBC. I think we get it.
yeah, I do like how British shows are basically like Europe is like just one giant group and everything just crosses over. Like what's
Yeah.
Great British Bake Off and they do that. It's like great,
Mm, right.
but like the show wisely talks about how like Kwame isn't infallible. It's like not that it happened. Like now that this happened to him, he's not just like a character who was. Uh, and I don't mean it to come off as like derivative, which is like woe is me, and somehow he can't do anything wrong. He
Right.
literally commits an assault like really soon after the fact,
Mm-hmm.
and it's him coming to terms like he really hurt her, and
Yeah.
the initial reaction is similar to what you can say what Shantir went through, where it's
Mm-hmm.
like
Oh yeah.
it seemed like just like this base level frustration, but it was like you were fundamentally lied to and taken advantage of, and I think she sort of goes out quiet towards the finale of I don't know if it's show or series. I don't know if they're going to come back for a season 2,
I know.
but just she is hurting, and Kwame still needs to sort of wrestle within himself that like her anger is valid because not only did he lie to her, that is ground of understanding for assault.
Yep. Wow. And see, I mean, I think that it's kind of this moral dilemma for the audience as well, because you're kind of you feel for him and you feel for Kwame so much because of the pain that he is feeling. And they make the character of God, give me her name,
Norfilla,
right, the character that Kwame basically assaults is not incredibly likable.
Nilifer.
I mean, she you know kind of uses some slurs here and there,
Yeah,
a little like, my goodness, this girl is not the best person. And so it's hard. At least it was slightly hard for me to kind of to not connect with her, but just be like,
like
God,
empathize with the experience.
exactly. It's difficult.
Yeah,
But like that's the thing. It's the understanding that no, Kwame did assault her because he
yeah,
misled her and lied and did it solely for the purpose of sex.
yeah. Well, and I'll give the show like I think it is fantastically navigating moral gray areas in all of this
Oh yeah,
because
definitely.
I major spoilers for the finale. If you guys didn't know, this is a spoiler show. I am sorry for not telling you that beforehand.
They know.
Um, I'm not sure if you noticed, but my face just went through many contortions because I
I,
realized does Arabella come full circle and then assault her at the very end?
I do not believe she does.
Okay, which
Mhm.
it's
What's your
again
interpretation?
it's basically I am just on the line of she basically lies him and uses him for sex, keep him around so that he can get arrested at the end.
Here's my situation. Do you believe what do you believe to be true about the finale?
That's an interesting question because I was really confused, and I think this show in particular lives and dies in its finale because it needs to wrap up everything. And again, in my perception right now is of it being a mini series. That is everything about
That's
it.
the ending. That's all it needed, in my opinion.
I would like to think that this is just Promising Young Woman again, where it's like, yeah, these things are happening and she's educating him, but there's so many things going on about it. I don't. Maybe the end is meant to be not literal because then she does like fuck him or peg him or something at the end.
So in my opinion, from what I saw, I believe, because if you think about it, this happens twice. You have a situation where you watch a scene happen pretty much 3 times. You watch this specific scene unfold in 3 different ways of Arabella confronting her abuser. The first time, she basically beats him up and assaults him in the street after drugging him, which was, I mean, it was a big power movement, but again, it was one of those kind of like moral, like, oh
Gray
my,
area.
he just, pulled his penis out in the street.
Which again, that idea of like,
Yeah.
is this assault? And we also don't know if it's reality or not, so we can't even say
Exactly.
if what she did is definable.
Right. And then the second time, you have this almost bittersweet. It was scary how almost, or how very intimate it was, where she brings him home. She makes him almost fall in love with her, brings him home, and they have this very passionate, very intimate, very beautiful almost sex. And it's again very, and but you like you said, you have this,
It's the softest the series ever shows sex.
oh,
A lot of it is just very animalistic or even
exactly.
just very natural. Almost, it's just like there's no glamour to it. It's just like, oh,
Right.
fucking nothing else
And
to it.
because I saw all of these scenes as something that was purely hypothetical, purely something that did not happen, and was just there to provide something else. I don't. I so she did go in the scene where they are having intercourse. She did go on top at one point, and it was very much like she was, fucking him. But in my head, I saw this as more of a power dynamic situation. I saw it as her taking control of the situation more so. I guess that was, I think I skipped
Yeah.
over an instance right in the middle of those two fake scenarios, I'm going to say, but they may not, one of them may have happened. I have no idea. In the middle of those, she basically therapizes him. That's not a word, but you know what I mean.
It's the show. The show offers perspective earlier in the season, again with her second assault within the show,
Right.
of this idea of men self-pitying self-pitying what happened so that they don't have to live with the fact of what they did.
Right.
And he sort of does that to an extent where you just see this almost bipolar side of him come out, where it's this vicious anger to self-hatred to just disgust and being unable to sort of live with what he did and somehow thinking that like, oh, it's not my fault, but by saying it's all my fault, hopefully you can excuse me of what's happened.
Right. And it's that kind of, it's a humanizing of an abuser, but in a literal sense, they are human, and that's what's scary about it. It's because they have their own feelings, and you find out through this, I'm gonna say again, this fake confrontation where she brings him back to her house only to call the cops and have him go to prison. You find out that he has already been to prison, and that he has been to prison for rape, and he's had to go through therapy and all of this stuff, and how he hates himself and doesn't uh, all of this just kind of very dramatic and kind of shocking things that you never really think that you could see come from someone who does something so vile and disgusting. But again, I don't see any of the endings that we saw within that 3 endings, the assaulting him, the bringing the abuser back to the apartment, or the making love, you could say, to the abuser. I don't think any of those truly happened. I personally see those instances is Arabella kind of coming to terms with the fact that if she were to see her abuser in public, or just if she were to ever see this man again, she does not have a firm grasp on what she would do. And I think it's her coming to terms with that, the fact that this is something that has happened to her and that it has forever changed her life, but her coming to terms and understanding that she's not going to let it affect her anymore. And there's this kind of quick scene right at the very end of her, on the beach, and instead of like she did earlier in the series where she walks straight into the ocean under the water for who knows how long, she's walking alongside the beach. She's walking away, from the problem because she's not going to let it affect her, although it is something that will stay with her forever. That's how I but
I am one. I'm trying to remember, like, if maybe the entire finale is like not real, and it's all just because like so the second last episode literally ends with her. The whole series basically predicated around episode 1. She gets drugged and possibly assaulted, and she can't really think. She doesn't really realize it. And on the second last episode, it literally ends with her seeing the man who did this to her. And finally, every memory just hits, and she can see everything that happened that night. I'm wondering if the series just ends there, and the entire last episode is her just coming to terms with it and thinking, how would I do this? And I think that speaks to a lot of things. Like, there's a lot of things in our lives which we think back about, especially trauma, where it's, what could I do different? How could I change this? Or how do I conquer it even?
Right.
And like you said, like the final shot of just sort of that acceptance within either herself or her head or anything.
Right.
Of just
that's what I truly believe it is. I think we get to interpret it for ourselves, but at the same time, this is such a personal story to Michaela that we really do need her perspective on it, and we do need to have this kind of, hey, what does it mean? Will you tell us? And if she tells us to interpret it for ourselves, then that's what we do.
Yeah.
But if there's a truth to it, then I'd love to hear it.
I think the series ends on a possibility of like we could follow. We even mentioned fucking Terry like at all.
Right. Oh God.
Even though like again like the idea of just like this idea of lying around sex and the questioning of that gray area of assault and coming to terms with that. Like, she experienced that in like the first second episode. Like she just got this gig as an actor among also that revelation. And Kwame never really got he never really got closure about what happened. And like the idea of like both him being assaulted and him assaulting someone else, will also now like in this budding first ever healthy relationship for him.
Right.
And there's so many things that we could do with Michaela's book. But are we meant to keep it open-ended?
I'm one of those people that's very, if they do decide to do a second season, I will watch it and I will be interested. However, it's not something that needs it. It really, I think we said it earlier, the ending or the finale is it's all the closure I think that I need. And I think that's what this entire series is kind of about, or leading up to, is the idea of getting closure for the things that feel impossible, impossible to come to terms with, and obviously it will be something that, and it is something that affects people for the rest of their lives. However, this show is more showing the idea of understanding that, but not allowing it to completely overtake your entire existence. And so I think that, does it need a second season? If Michaela Cole believes it does, then yes, but that's only because it's her story. I don't know if she's finished telling it yet. And that's kind of, again, where I'm like, I would love to see a second season, but if there's no room for one, or if there's no need for one, then okay.
I will say, because we like the way you perceive the finale, literally. So I found an interview with Michaela, or with Cole, from the Hollywood Reporter. where she said before the series ended, I don't want to give anything away, but I think when you see the final episode, you'll know if we're coming back for a second season.
So yeah, I don't think it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it will.
No, it wraps up perfectly. But then IMDb literally has it as like, we might get a second season. We don't know. It's like, no, I just want to fucking know. It's like, the idea of if it has an ending changes how we interpret the art.
Right.
And that's how I was with Euphoria before I got these 2 spin-off episodes, which is just like, do we end here? Is Jules just in San Francisco or whatever? Does it just stop there? Or is there more to this? And like that changes how we perceive every character.
I never really in my wildest dreams imagined Euphoria not having a second season because of one.
I would scream if it didn't. I would be fucking mad.
I would have freaked out. But people were convinced. But yeah, so I don't believe that there will be a second season. I don't believe it needs one if ending it the way it did was very intentional. As why would it not be intentional? That's a weird way to put it. But I just think that it's a story that, you know, she was able to tell within that period of time, and that's all it needed, because if you continue with the series, obviously, you know, you could touch more on Terry's story, you could touch more on Kwame's story, you could even go into her roommate Bill, who I love so much, and we don't even get to know him. He just likes his plants.
I think the only thing you can go from Arabella's perspective is her social media presence.
Yeah, and
a big thing we sort of touch on with the character, but not really deeply, is like she got famous through Twitter, and she came to terms with a lot of this. Like, I keep referring back to her second assault because that, to me, that was like a lot of the meat of the show when I first got into it. It's like, oh, the way her perceiving this, I think, is like really. It was what I sank in my teeth into before I started really like connecting to the supporting characters. She became like the speaker of coming to terms with, like, sexual assault and like fighting against your abusers, because she went on a book tour basically and just like, hey, he did it. Dude's in the audience. He's fucking here. He did it. And I think you can go more into her relationship with social media and basically saying, one, what she did is like, it's yes, but also danger, because then she looks into doxing abusers. And again, that gray area of just like, yes, they are very shitty people, but you're also promoting criminal activity. And I think diving into social media could be a direction, but I also don't know if that's sort of taking away from what the first season really was.
Right. And also the fact that she kind of reconnected with that abuser at the end.
Yeah.
And he was able to help.
It's really interesting.
I know. I found that. I
think it's set up well for the finale episode of her of it just basically like recontextualizing and coming to terms with it all, because it was like, yes, he lied to her again and he manipulated her, and she's like, I'm not going to let you get close. I'm going to use you, and like, you're doing this. Oh, I agree. Cool. Bye. Get out. Right. And then just moved on.
Yeah.
I think it was a really, I'm not sure if mature is the right word, but I liked what she did and the way she approached that interaction.
I agree. God, there's so much to talk about with this show.
It's a really dense show that I could see like writing a paper about if I was in like a gender studies course again.
Sure. Because we didn't even touch on the entirety of Italy.
I enjoyed it, but I think also just because I like going to see like the architecture of foreign countries, and just like seeing, I was like, oh, I like this a lot, even though it also like sets up for a lot of the interpersonal character drama, and again, the gray area, because everything's fucking gray.
Exactly. God, but I have to ask, because I feel like you were maybe we're a little. So what will give me your opinions on the whole snubbing of the Golden Globes. What do you believe that it deserves? Because I can sense some hesitation.
Well, I hesitate only because I literally don't watch like any TV.
That's fair. This show not being nominated for anything, I think, makes me the most upset, because Emily in Paris, something that is phenomenally and widely known for being awful, was nominated for things, while this story that was beautifully told was not, and that's something
Right.
that kind of
But
makes me upset. But
those aren't in direct competition though, because like the prom,
right,
yeah, it was in for comedy, but there was a lot of comedies that came out this year.
right.
My thing is looking at these. Ratchet got nominations in TV series drama and actress drama, which is bullshit. No
Yeah,
one likes Ratchet. Have I seen it?
no,
No. Have I read reviews on YouTube? Absolutely. Fuck
I
that.
don't
Get
like
that
it.
out of here. Put
And
this in.
I mean, there's the whole idea of like, okay, everything that's nominated can't be the fan favorite, but there has to at least be a consensus of enjoyment, which Ratchet and Emily in Paris are two, like, people don't like them, and people know that. It is a widely hated, if you will, thing. Both of them are. And I just think that why would we why would we give accolades to these shows that no one enjoys when there are things that people really appreciate that aren't as well known? I just
Like, this is a show that deserves a bigger platform. Yes, it's on HBO, and yes, it has a very loud group of fervent supporters.
Mhm.
And I mean, honestly, this is Euphoria minus Zendaya.
Yeah.
It's it's
Yeah,
I think it
Euphoria
hits sort of the
first.
same target audience. It has some of the same filmic styles. The big difference is that you don't have a big star attached who's going to promote it everyone on social media because like
I
while Michaela Cole has her fans, she's not Zendaya. I think us too, because we're spider whores, can like validate that.
let's finish up with I May Destroy You, and then we can move on to what we will be talking about next week. What would you rate this out of 10? Oh, it's hard to
Oh,
rate series, isn't it?
I literally just I wouldn't Letterboxd give it 4.5 out of 5. I don't want to think about it anymore. Because
That's fair.
I like
Yeah,
for me, TV series are like they're good or they're bad. I
yep.
think individual rating comes down to like individual seasons. Even then, you can break down by episode because some things are more inconsistent. It's like I take it as a whole, and I think as a whole, it is really good. I probably won't come back to it, at least not for a while. But if it gets picked up for a season 2, I'll be watching it.
I agree, and I would have to agree with that rating as well. So yes, those thank you for listening to our reviews on What If and I May Destroy You. But for next week, oh my goodness, are we in for a treat? This is going to be like a 50-hour long episode because I love this so much and it's not even over yet. We don't even know what happens. But next week, we will be discussing the, I want to say it's critically acclaimed, but I don't know if it is. We will be discussing, it's critically acclaimed by me. We will be discussing WandaVision, the, oh my, there we go. This is the best intro too. Oh my God.
I picked it out for a very specific reason.
WandaVision. Oh my gosh, we will be talking about WandaVision, my favorite show of the year so far, and it's not even over yet. But yes, so we will be talking about WandaVision next week, right as it ends. There's going to be a pretty
Yeah.
quick turnaround because we
Like
gotta.
we'll be recording it like probably like a day or two after. Like we will be in it still,
But I mean,
freaking out
I'm
when.
ready. But thank you so much for listening to Real Talk. Follow us on social medias at Real Talk PTB on Twitter and Instagram. But yeah, Adelaide, do you wanna read us out?
Yeah. Thank you for watching Real Talk. We will be watching you next week. We'll be talking to you next week. Hope we can see you then when we're nerding out and freaking out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. And if not, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Catch you on the flip side.